Today on Stock Charts in Focus, we're covering my 5 favorite features of ACP, our interactive advanced charting platform. We're building on last week's show where we covered my 5 favorite features of Sharp Charts. So we're going to walk you through some different corners of ACP. Of course, along the way, we're going to show you some tips, tricks, shortcuts, things that I use every single day, some of my absolute go-to resources within ACP. So lots to cover. You know what it is. It's all new. It's all here. It's Stock Charts in Focus. All right, my friends, welcome to the show, Stock Charts in Focus, our product focus show here on the channel where we dig into the site, dive into the features, show you around the tools, and help you get more value out of StockCharts.com. That is our mission here every Friday on Stock Charts in Focus. Thank you for joining me on today's show. My name is Grayson Roze, Vice President of Operations here at Stock Charts. If you're new to the show, welcome, welcome. Like I said, remember, we do this every Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Stock Charts TV. Also, up on our YouTube channel after that, and of course the on-demand platform at StockChartsTV.com. So lots of ways to watch. But if you are coming back for another episode, welcome back. Good to have you. Today, what we're doing is we're having a little bit of fun kind of building on the episode that we did last week. So a week ago, we covered 5 of my favorite features in Sharp Charts, our original legacy tool, the one that we are so well known for all across the web, the one that I'm sure many of you are probably using. But we covered 5 of my favorite features in Sharp Charts, things that I use every day in that platform. But I actually use both. I'm a Sharp Charts user. I'm an ACP user. There are pros and cons to both of them. There are strengths and weaknesses, of course, things that one does really, really well, things that another one does really, really well. So on this kind of 2-week series here, we're sort of comparing and contrasting in the process, but really, we're also just highlighting some great corners of both products, both Sharp Charts and ACP. We're walking you through some of my favorite features within both of those. So today, it's ACP's turn. We're going to jump into the new interactive, full screen, dynamic, advanced charting platform, ACP. Show you around some of the things that I think you need to know, things that you can use to get more value out of ACP. These are things that I use every single day in the platform, and really important aspects of this tool that I want to make sure you know about. So 5 favorite features of ACP. Let's get right to it. Here we go. So welcome to ACP, of course, our interactive advanced charting platform. If you are new to ACP, if this is something that you haven't seen before, you're wondering what it is, this actually launched last year. It's a product that we've been working on for quite some time, really designed to bring a much more kind of interactive, fluid, dynamic experience to Stock Charts. A little bit more modern, but it brings in a ton of different things. Over here on the right side of the screens, for instance, you've got access to your chart lists. You can run scans. You can see your alerts, watch what the market's doing. You can see the scooter movers. You can even jump into things like the symbol summary, which is actually one that we're going to cover a little later in the show. But as you're going to see on today's show, ACP is a very dynamic platform. There's a ton here, a lot of interactivity, and that is included in some of the features that we are going to highlight on today's show. So my first of 5 favorite features in ACP really is kind of a catch-all. I'm sort of cheating here right off the bat, I admit it. But what we're going to talk about is editing indicators and repositioning indicators. Really, some of the different tools, tips, and tricks, things like that, for helping set up your charts. Now, you can see that on this chart that I'm looking at, actually a pretty stripped out one. This is what I call my level 2 chart. We actually did an episode a few months ago, probably at this point, on how I use what I call chart levels. So I actually kind of start with a very stripped out chart and I build up as I go. We'll start using some of my more complex charts later in the show to highlight a couple of the other features. But right now we're looking at a pretty stripped out chart. What I want to highlight, though, is how you can set up your chart, how you can start to move these indicators around, how you can access some of the indicator editing features, because there's some really cool, really powerful stuff that you can use here in ACP on the fly. I find that I actually edit my charts quite a lot more in ACP than I do in SharpCharts. In SharpCharts, things are kind of set up and they're just sort of there for me. But in ACP, I'm always kind of looking for an edge. I'm looking for something new. And so I end up actually jumping into the settings, moving things around, adding more indicators, that kind of thing, quite a lot more than I do in SharpCharts. So first up, my favorite feature is just really how easy it is to access the indicator editing features. Now, before we jump into the chart itself, we're actually going to take a look at the chart settings menu, which is over here on the left side of the screen. So this is a collapsible panel. You can actually collapse this down to create a little bit more room for your charts. But by default, when you open ACP, you're going to have this panel open. Now, of course, down below, this is how you add indicators to your chart. So you've got the add indicator menu, tons and tons of indicators to choose from built into the platform. And as you can see with this little starring system, you can actually favorite the ones that you use most frequently, and those will show up in your favorites list right at the top. So it makes it very easy to access those. So kind of included in this catch-all #1 favorite feature is actually that indicator favoriting system. I like to do that, makes it really easy to find those. But with plugins on top of that, for instance, our free advanced indicator pack, if you're a StockCharts member, you can install this plugin for free in your account. Brings all of these additional indicators into your ACP experience. And of course, we have other plugins from folks like Larry Williams, Arthur Hill. The team at Simpler Trading just launched a plugin from TG Watkins, Mish and her team at Market Gauge. Lots and lots of plugins that we've brought to the platform. So even more indicators you can actually add to ACP than what you get out of the box. But to add any of these indicators, super, super easy. All you've got to do is click on one of these. So for instance, if we wanted to add the scooter line, all we have to do, give that a quick click to add that indicator to our charts. Now, once we've added an indicator, of course, at first, the edit indicator panel is going to pop up. So once you add that indicator, it's really easy to start editing the settings. For instance, if we wanted to turn off the rainbow shading on the scooter indicator, we could set this to blank. All of this shows up right there for you right at the start. If we even wanted to delete an indicator, all we've got to do is come down here and hit that little delete button. Now we're kind of back to the way this chart looked at first. But if you want to get back there, let's say you've added an indicator to your charts long ago, and now you want to go edit some of the settings. You want to maybe change the colors, change some of the parameters, anything that you want to do. There are actually a couple of different ways to do that here in ACP. So of course, above the add indicator menu, you have what we call the chart outline. This really gives you kind of a full outline of everything that's on the chart. Actually shows you, with some of these indentations, actually shows you some of the other things that you've added, overlays, indicators, overlays on indicators, that kind of thing. So you can see all of that in here. And this is the first way that you can access some of these indicator settings. So anytime you hover over an indicator or an overlay on your chart, you'll see that you actually have this little gears icon. You also have a trash can, which is how you can quickly delete something if you do want to quickly remove it from the chart. But if you ever want to access the edit indicator menu to actually customize the settings of an indicator, you can do that simply by hovering over the indicator in the chart settings menu, giving that little gear icon a click, and that'll pull up that menu that we were just looking at before, allowing you to edit any of the custom settings for any of the indicators on your charts. When you're done, all you got to do is close that down, and all of those update in real time. So they'll kind of follow along with you. Now, you also have, though, another easier way to access this. So let's say you had the chart settings menu closed down and you want to edit the settings of, for instance, the RSI. Well, all you got to do actually is look for the little label on the chart itself, give that a click, and that is really quickly going to open up the edit indicator menu for that indicator. So you don't actually have to go hover over the indicator name in the chart outline and find that little gears icon. If you want to edit something on your chart, you can actually just click on the label on the chart, and that is immediately going to pull up the edit indicator menu for that specific indicator. So I love how easy it is to access this stuff, really just kind of on the fly, clicking on something. And there's a built-in one here that I want to highlight as well. So as you've probably seen with SharpCharts, we have a couple of different sections to the SharpCharts workbench. In the SharpCharts workbench, we have sort of a main chart settings area. And then below that, we have overlays and indicators. We've done something similar here in ACP, kind of from that DNA of SharpCharts. there is a separate chart settings menu for the chart as a whole. So you've got your edit indicators and edit overlays menus, but you also have a separate panel for editing the chart settings as a whole. So for instance, if you wanted to change the scale to something like logarithmic, you can do that from the chart settings menu. So a couple of different ways to access that. First and foremost, when you open up this main chart settings panel on the left side, you'll see that you actually have the symbol and the name of that symbol right at the top. That tells you exactly which chart you're editing, exactly what you're working with. There's another little gears icon right there. So you've got that little gear, and anytime you click that, this is going to open what we call the chart settings menu for the chart as a whole. So this is things like, again, your y-axis scale, if you want to change it to logarithmic. Some of your chart header options. If you want to add extra bars to your chart, this is where you can do that, add some more space on the right. Actually, that's one thing that we highlighted with Sharp Charts last week, something that I use a lot, the extra bars feature. You can do different grid options, all the different visuals and different settings, adding price labels, all that good stuff. And of course, the settings for the candlesticks, or if you're using a bar chart, the bar color settings, line charts, all that stuff, all of those settings that you're kind of looking for are in this main chart settings menu for sort of the chart as a whole. So once again, you've got all that in here, and you can access that through the panel on the left, the main chart settings panel, just by clicking that little gear icon at the top of the panel. But just like we were looking at with your indicators and with your overlays, to access that menu, you can also just click the label right at the top that has the company name in it, the symbol or the company name right there. So when I click Workiva, right there, I click that very top label. That's sort of the main label of the chart right in the price panel itself. Again, I open up that menu and I can now edit any of those settings. So changing things on the fly in ACP really is pretty easy. All you've got to do is kind of click where you want to go and you'll be taken there. If you want to edit the RSI, you just click on RSI. If you want to edit one of your moving averages, maybe you want to change the period of the 200 to be 250. All you've got to do is click that 200 period moving average and you're taken right there. You can start to edit all of those settings. So first up, editing indicators. Super, super easy here in ACP. Now, before we move on to number two, I know this was kind of a long number one here, catching a whole bunch of things. Like I said, a bit of a catch-all. But I do also want to highlight how easy it is to actually move indicators up and down on your chart. Repositioning indicators is very easy here in ACP. I'm lumping that in to number one here, editing indicators, really kind of setting up your chart. Again, you've got two options, two ways to do it. You can use the panel over on the left. You can use that chart settings panel, look for the chart outline, and all of these little grab bars here for all of the different indicators and overlays on your chart. These actually let you move things around. So if we wanted to take, for instance, this relative strength line, we wanted to move that to be at the bottom of the chart, we can do that simply by grabbing that little drag bar, and you can see that when I drag up and down, I can now reposition that indicator up and down on my charts. Now you can position things behind other things, you can position things above or below other things, and these different visuals kind of help you see where you're placing something. So here with the solid yellow line at the bottom, that's going to place that indicator at the bottom of my chart. So you can see I've used that drag and drop feature to actually move that indicator down to the bottom. Now, of course, we've got two options though. Just like we were looking at with some of those edit indicator menus, you can move things around simply using the chart outline. Or if you have that actually closed down and you're sort of on the fly editing things, want to move stuff around, you can actually just click and drag on the label itself, the chart legend itself. And again, you get those kind of yellow visuals to indicate where you're dropping something. So when I bring this up here, when I drag it back up to the top, I've now got that relative strength line at the top of my chart. So I'm lumping that in with number one. But editing indicators, editing your charts, repositioning things around your charts, really setting up your ACP charts, super, super easy. Some of these tools I use every single day. So I wanted to make sure that was the first favorite feature that we highlight here in today's show in ACP. So let's jump into my second favorite feature in ACP, actually kind of one that I highlighted last week in Sharp Charts. I'm going to open up this chart settings menu. We have a very, very cool on-the-fly version of one of my favorite Sharp Charts features, the full quote. Again, this is something that we talked about on last week's episode. I talked about the full quote panel, which changes the visual at the top of your charts in StockCharts, brings in more data, things like PE ratios, earnings per share, dividends, scooters, market cap, all that stuff gets put right at the top of your StockCharts. It's a feature that I've used for a very, very long time, an incredibly important one for me, because at a quick glance, I can get access to things like what's the scooter score for this stock? What's the market cap of this stock? Very important things that I want to know as I'm researching different securities. So we have that same option in ACP, but it works a little bit differently. There's some cool things about how we've built it into ACP. Again, this is really intended to be kind of a dynamic, fluid, interactive experience. So we've brought that in with something like the full quote. So to access the full quote, to access the chart headers and sort of change the look of the top of your charts, the visual at the top of your charts, we're actually going to use something that we just covered. I'm going to jump into the main chart settings for the chart as a whole. I'm going to click right on Workiva. That's going to pull up this panel right here with all of my different chart settings. One that I mentioned briefly earlier in the show was the chart header section. So when we say chart header, what we're talking about is this kind of gray bar at the top. Now that changes depending on the color scheme that you have. You might have a white bar or a blue bar or a black bar, but the top of your chart is what we refer to as the chart header. So when you open this up, you've got a couple of different options in here actually. You have some different options from what you have in StockCharts. There's actually kind of an extra one. So we do have a slim quote option. When we do the slim quote option, you'll see that the chart really narrows down. We don't have a ton of data in here. We get the symbol, we get the company name, the date, the timestamp, of course, the exchange as well. And we get some basic price information, really just sort of the last price, the change, and the percent change. Now, we can jump this up to what we had before, which is what we call the standard quote. In the standard quote, we bring in a little bit more. The exchange moves up top. We've got the sector and the industry when relevant. We've got that same symbol and company name, but we get a little bit more data over here. The last price actually becomes a bit bigger. We get open, high, low, and volume. And of course, we get the change and percent change right there. So a little bit more of kind of a robust chart header at the top of the screen. We have a final option though, which is the full quote. When you turn on the full quote here in the chart settings menu, that's going to keep that full quote panel open on your charts. So it works just the same as StockCharts. You turn on the full quote, it'll get saved with your chart. Every time you pull up that ACP chart, it'll be there for you. And it's the same data. You get bid and ask when the market is open. You get PE ratios and earnings per share, market cap, options, dividends, scooter information. You get the actual group, the universe that this belongs to, plus the scooter score right there. So lots of great info in the full quote. But what's very, very cool about this, you'll notice that on my chart that we started with, I actually didn't have the full quote open. The reason for that is that we've made it easily accessible right from the standard quote option. You notice that you have this little plus sign. I'll actually close down our chart settings menu there. We've got a little plus sign here on your charts, which allows you to access the full quote in a single click. So to get that open, all you've got to do, click the little plus icon and the full quote drops out. If you want to close that back down, give yourself a little bit more room for your charting, you just click the minus sign and the full quote goes away. So this feature of ACP is something I use a ton. And again, I like to have as much space for my charts as I can, but that full quote information is incredibly useful. At a quick glance, it gives me a ton. So the ability to just sort of pop that panel open when I want is something that's very, very powerful in ACP. I love that feature. So second favorite feature of ACP, just like we had on StockCharts, the full quote, but a little bit different here because it's a little bit more interactive. On the fly from that standard header, you can just pop that open, access that full quote data, and then close it back down. Give yourself a little bit more room for your charting. Very, very cool feature of ACP. So let's move on to our third favorite feature of ACP. My third favorite feature of ACP coming up. We're actually going to do something kind of fun. We're going to create a much more advanced chart. So like I mentioned earlier in the show, I have something called chart levels. So you can see that actually when I open up the chart styles menu over on the left side of the screen. These are all of my saved chart styles. So you can actually see in here I have 4 equities for stocks. I have level 0, level 1, level 2, level 3, and up to level 4. So these get sort of progressively more advanced as the leveling increases. So by the time we get to level 4, we have a chart with a ton on it. Now, this is a great representation of another one of my favorite features in ACP, which we call fit to window mode, a very, very cool feature. So here in ACP, by default, you'll notice that this little option up at the top right corner of the screen is actually turned on. So by default, fit to window mode is enabled. What that means is that your chart, no matter how many indicators you have on it, is going to be fit to the browser window. It's going to be fit to the screen. Everything is going to get sort of scrunched, if you will, onto the screen. So when you have a chart with maybe 2 indicators, 3 indicators, maybe even 4 indicators, that might be okay. But when you have a chart like this one, which brings in a ton of stuff, I've got a whole bunch of relative strength panels up here, which allow me to judge the stock versus the market, the sector versus the market, the industry versus the sector, lots of cool stuff in these relative strength panels. And then I have a couple of different indicators at the bottom. I've got the RSI, accumulation distribution, and on balance volume in one panel, plus, of course, the scooter panel that we were looking at earlier in the show. I've got a ton on this chart. And so when I have fit to window mode enabled, when I have this little option checked, when that little circle is on, this chart gets, to me, a little bit scrunchy. Everything gets a little bit small. Everything kind of starts to flatten out. So what we've actually created here in ACP is the ability to turn that off. So when I uncheck this box, you notice that that little gray circle goes away and the chart has now gotten taller. The chart actually goes off the screen now. So when I get to my level 3 or my level 4 charts where I have a lot more indicators on the chart, instead of letting everything kind of stack up and get kind of scrunchy for me, I actually let the chart go off the screen. I turn this little feature off. I turn fit to window mode off. So the chart is no longer fit to the browser window. And now I can scroll vertically along this chart. I get sort of a taller chart that actually goes off the screen. And I can see all of these indicators a little bit better. I can see this price move a little bit better because it's not so flat. I can see these relative strength lines a lot better because they're not so flat. I can see what's going on with these indicators at the bottom, like where the RSI is exactly, how the accumulation distribution and on balance volume have been moving. All of these different indicators have a little bit more space for me to work with. So by turning that fit to window mode off, when I have a taller chart, a busier chart, a chart with more indicators, I'm able to get a lot more out of this chart. Now it does change some of the cursor functions. So in this case, when I scroll up and down on this chart, I'm actually scrolling up and down on the taller chart. I can still scroll back and forth in time, but when I scroll up and down, it's actually going to move, like I said, up and down the chart. That is not the case when I turn fit to window mode on. Here, when I turn fit to window mode on, when I scroll up and down, I actually zoom in and out. And when I scroll left to right, of course, I move left to right. So the cursor does work a little bit differently in these two modes. But once you get used to that, it really can help you if you've got a sort of a busier chart with more indicators and more overlays on it. So fit to window mode, something you should get to know in ACP, especially if you're like me and you like adding a bunch of indicators to your charts. Makes things a little easier to see here in ACP. So we are on to our fourth favorite feature of ACP here. We're actually going to highlight a specific part of the multi-chart layouts feature within ACP. So here in ACP, you can create multi-chart layouts, customized layouts with lots of different chart configurations, all that good stuff, up to 12 charts on the screen at once. So this is how you really can start to create pretty advanced charting dashboards within ACP. Of course, to access the layout features, you're over here on the left side. Look for that layouts icon, the last one in the group on the left side of the screen. Now, the very cool thing about this too is that you can actually save your layout. So here in the top group, you can see all of the layouts that I have saved to my account, but we also have sample layouts that you can pull up. Very, very easy to pull up these different sample layouts, which gives you access to some sort of pre-configured groups that you might want to watch. Things like, what are the major market indexes doing all on the screen at once? Some of the different market cap tiers. We've got some very cool things like new Dow theory, something that Dave Keller, our chief market strategist, talks about a lot. So lots of different sample layouts that you can play around with. But you can do a ton with these layouts. Here in the section down below that, the create layout section, you can actually choose how many charts you want on the screen. And when you do that, you can see all the different configurations that are available to you. So what we're gonna do actually is jump into one of those sample layouts, the CandleGlance layout. Now this is gonna be a little funny because it's just gonna load the same symbol 12 times. From here, you could start to really customize this, but let's say you've got 12 different symbols up on the screen in what we call our CandleGlance sample layout, because this is really kind of how you can start to create an ACP version of CandleGlance, one of our sharp charts tools. But let's say you've got this 12 chart layout up on the screen. Now, each of these charts pretty small, kind of hard to see. So especially if you had more data on these, they get pretty small. So you might want to actually expand one of these, sort of dive into it. Let's say you had a whole bunch of different symbols on the screen. You've got one that you're kind of pinpointing, and you want to actually see exactly what's going on with that chart in a little bit bigger view. It's very easy to do that right from your multi-chart layout here. When you hover over a chart in a multi-chart layout, you notice that you have a little icon here that looks like an expand button. That is the maximize chart button. So when you do that, you give that a click, that chart is gonna blow up and it's gonna take over the entire screen. Now this is a full featured chart in a full featured mode. You could add indicators to this, you could move it around. Of course, as I'm doing here, you can zoom in, you can zoom out, you can change the scale of this. Anything that you wanna do with this chart in maximize mode, you can do. And when you're ready to get back to your layout, all you've gotta do is either click that button that you clicked to maximize it. You notice it changes to be a sort of a shrink chart button, or you can look in the top right corner of the page. You also have a shrink chart button up there. So you shrink it back down and there you go. You're right back to your multi-chart layout with those 12 charts up on the screen. Now you can do this no matter how many charts you have, even if you have a simple layout with a daily and a weekly chart up, just 2 charts on the screen. That's actually a view that I use quite a bit. So for instance, we can actually pull that up right now. Let's do daily, weekly. So what you see now, I have a daily chart of Workiva and I have a weekly chart of Workiva. This allows me to sort of combine those 2 timeframes into one view. Very powerful, a great example of kind of what you can do with these multi-chart layouts. But even in this, I might want to make my weekly chart a little bit bigger, sort of focus on that one, work with that one for a little bit. So all I've got to do, hit that expand button, makes it really easy to dive in there. I can now spend a little bit of time working with my weekly chart. I can then shrink that back down, compare, contrast, blow up the daily chart, make that one full screen, spend a little bit of time working with that. So this is a feature of the multi-chart layouts that I absolutely love. Whether you've got 12 charts on the screen and you want to sort of blow up one of those little mini charts, or even if you've got a 2-chart layout and you just want to spend a little bit more time working with one of those. That multi-chart feature and the maximize mode in that multi-chart layouts feature is just very, very powerful. So there's a ton. Frankly, if I'm honest with you, I was a little bit torn here because I also wanted to highlight the saving feature. I wanted to highlight the sample layouts. I even wanted to highlight some of these different features down at the bottom that I use a ton, like the apply to all range feature. When you've got a ton of charts on the screen, if you have this box checked, you can actually apply that new range to anything on the screen. So for instance, you could change all your charts on the screen at once to be a 2-year chart or 1-year chart or a 6-month chart, anything that you wanted to choose. There are so many different features of this multi-chart layout feature in ACP. Really kind of it is its own feature in the platform, but tons to highlight there. That maximize chart one though, I think a lot of people kind of gloss over that and it is an important one. So one of my personal favorites here for layouts in ACP, that is number 4 on my favorite features list for today's show. So last but not least, my 5th favorite feature of ACP that we're going to highlight today, something we actually flashed up on the screen earlier in the show, the symbol summary panel. An absolute favorite of mine, really kind of a complement to the data that you get in the full quote, kind of an expanded full quote view. But we've actually built the standalone symbol summary feature. You might be familiar with that from outside of ACP. We do have the symbol summary page. You can access that for any symbol that you're researching. But we've taken that very popular feature of the site. We've actually built that right into ACP, sort of brought it right into the experience to make it accessible right from your charts. We are going to dive into that now because it is absolutely one of the things that I use every single day in ACP. So I'm going to close down the panel on the left. I'm actually going to leave up our daily and weekly view because this is a great example of kind of how you can combine some of these different things. We've got our daily chart of Workiva. We've got our weekly chart of Workiva. And over on the right side of the screen, I'm going to open up that symbol summary panel. Now you look for the little sort of file with a dollar sign, give that a click, and that's going to open up the symbol summary panel for Workiva. Anything that you have up on the screen, anything that is the active chart. So in this case, you can actually see that little green border. That indicates it's the active chart. The symbol summary is automatically going to pull in the symbol that you're looking at on the active chart. So if you have different charts up on the screen and you're sort of clicking around from one to another, if you got 12 charts on the screen, you're clicking around to different symbols, the symbol summary panel is going to follow along with you. If we change this to something like, we'll do Yeti, you can see that this chart changed. We can actually change our other one as well. I don't have symbol sync on, so that's why they didn't change together. But you can change both of these, and you'll see that as I did that, the symbol summary kind of followed along with us. So it makes it really easy to start actually sort of flipping through different symbols with that symbol summary open, and it just kind of follows along with you. Now, what's included here in the symbol summary? It's really kind of everything that you would want to know about a symbol. So a lot more data. We've got sort of summary data, which brings in things like 52 range. What's the all-time high? When is the next earnings date? What was the previous earnings date? Dividends, options, again, kind of a complement to some of those things that you see in the full quote. We even bring in some fundamentals. That's actually an area that we are working on expanding at the moment. So very exciting stuff coming there very soon, but fundamental data available right here in the symbol summary. You've got some sort of go-to technicals, which is great to see. I love to use this. It gives you a sense of where things are trading relative to key moving averages. So this tells you where the 20 period, 50 period, and 200 period moving averages are, and EMA, exponential moving average for the 20, and simple moving averages for the 50 and 200. But tells you where those are and tells you actually how far price is away from them, above or below. You've got things like 1 month performance, 3 month, 6 month performance, year to date performance actually in here. That's one that's always fun, especially as we get into sort of the back half of the year. But you've got a couple of key technicals in here, scooter rankings, and then one that I love is the company profile, the corporate profile. So this will actually give you a description of what the company does. It'll tell you how many employees they have, give you a quick link to their website if you want to sort of jump over to the actual company website, keep your research going over there. And of course, at the bottom, you do have the full symbol summary page, which you can always open outside of ACP. But very, very cool to have all of this available. And there's some great things that you can do with this. So for instance, if I actually jump back to our layouts panel, I'll turn on symbol sync. That's what I didn't have on before. What you can do, for instance, this is a view that I have up on my screens a lot. I've got my daily chart, I've got my weekly chart. I'm flipping through different symbols, for instance, Netflix. Now, because I've turned on symbol sync, that's gonna keep the symbols in sync across a layout. So I've actually got that sort of changing in one go, and I've got the symbol summary flipping along. So it makes it really easy to kind of breeze through symbols, pull up these different charts, use these layouts, and use the symbol summary feature at the same time. I just love this view. This is something I have up on my screen a lot. Now, the other cool thing that you can do here, actually, we've made a change recently. So the symbol summary panel opens in its own panel. What I mean by that is that on the right side of the screen, if you do something like open up your chart lists, you can actually see that the symbol summary panel is right next to your chart lists. So when you're creating chart lists in ACP, lists that you're saving symbols into, lists that you're saving your charts into, you can create those lists. You've got them accessible over here on the right side of the screen, or at the bottom of the screen via the chart list drawer. You've got both of those different options. So two ways to actually view your chart list here in ACP. But with this open, you can start to flip through your chart lists. And again, the symbol summary is gonna follow along with you. So when I give this a click, both of these charts are gonna change. Oh, I've got actually that mode on. So when I click this, now both of these are gonna change together. The symbol summary changed, and I can start to flip through this chart list now, and the symbol summary follows along with me. So this is a great tool to use. For instance, if you're reviewing your portfolio on a daily or a weekly basis, you can pull up a view like this And you can actually kind of use ACP to flip through the symbol summary for everything that you own in your portfolio. You can do that for your watch list. You can do that for anything that you're stocking, any list that you can really imagine. You can do it with scan results, lots and lots of different uses for this. But the ability to really open up a list here on the right side of ACP, or open it up at the bottom of the screen and do the exact same thing. So now you've got your daily, your weekly, you've got your symbol summary on the right, you've got your list at the bottom. We can do the exact same thing. We can start to flip through this list. It's very, very cool how you can do this. Just sort of flipping through and having that symbol summary really kind of just follow along with you as you go. So that is my 5th favorite feature of ACP. Of course, we covered a ton here on today's show, but we looked at how to edit your indicators, how to customize your charts, set things up. Of course, we dove into the full quote, talked about how the interactive full quote here in ACP works. We looked at fit to window mode and talked about how you can actually turn fit to window mode off for some of your taller charts, give yourself a little bit more room to work with those charts. Jumped over into multi-chart layouts, showed the maximize feature. That's something I use a ton. And then of course, we finished up with our symbol summary tool in ACP, a personal favorite of mine. Such an important resource here, right in ACP. Having that right next to your charts, just very, very powerful. So hopefully you got a lot out of this show. Walked you through a couple of different corners of the platform. Hopefully you saw something new, thought about something in a way you hadn't thought about it before, saw something maybe you hadn't seen before. But these are 5 of my favorite features in ACP, really things that I use every day, every week, things that are kind of helping me get more value out of ACP. So when someone asks me, Grayson, how do I get more value out of ACP? What should I be using? How do I really kind of get to know all the different corners of this platform and really get more out of it? These are things that I point them to. I'll talk about things like the symbol summary. I'll talk about multi-chart layouts, all the things you can do with that, maximizing charts, all those fun things you can do. And the interactivity really is a huge one. So getting to know some of those interactive features, the different things that you can do with ACP, even stuff like just what your cursor does, scrolling up and down, scrolling left and right. We looked at some of that. Moving indicators up and down your charts. There's so much interactivity here in ACP. It really is an important part of that experience. So I want to thank you though for joining me on today's show. Hopefully you saw last week's edition where we did something very similar with Sharp Charts. We took a look at some of my favorite features over in that platform. But we've done a little bit of a compare and contrast now between these 2 weeks, showing off some of the different features of both platforms. Again, I use both. I still use both in my approach to the markets. There are things that both of them just do excellently. So it's always fun to have both platforms kind of at your disposal. We love that here at StockCharts. Sharp Charts, absolutely not going anywhere, by the way. We are going to continue to invest heavily in that platform. It is a great, great platform. We love Sharp Charts. We also love having ACP, having that more dynamic, fluid experience. So both chart types really give you a more complete experience on StockCharts. That's our goal here, bringing you as much charting power as we can. So hopefully you've seen some of that in action over these last 2 episodes. I want to thank you again, though, for joining me on today's show. My name is Grayson Roze, Vice President of Operations here at StockCharts. Remember, we do this show, StockCharts in Focus, every Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Also up on our YouTube channel after that and the on-demand platform at stockchartstv.com. So lots of ways to watch, but hopefully you'll join me on next week's edition where we'll be back next Friday for another edition of the show. Thank you again for joining me. Until the next one, chart on, my friends.
Hey guys, Dave Keller here with StockCharts.com. Thanks so much for watching our video. If you enjoyed it, and we hope you did, hit the like button right below. Also, we have so much new content every day. Consider subscribing to the channel. Just hit the subscribe button in the video or right below. Thanks for watching. Stay safe. Have a fantastic day.